Good evening, everyone. If we could start with a moment of silent prayer. Thank you. Stand for the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call it to order.
Mine is on. Mr. Benton?
Here.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis? Here. Mrs. Thomas?
Here.
Mr. Swagger?
Here. Want to go into our discussion topics? Straight into our discussion, yeah? Or do you have anything?
Yeah, well, the topic for this evening's work session at the board's request was to have an opportunity to discuss the whole media arts communications program that's been proposed. At the last meeting, the board graciously approved the purchase of equipment, and board had some questions and wanted to dive a little deeper with the representatives from the donors group as well as administrators in the room and have a discussion before approving or considering approval of an instructor for a media arts communications program. Therefore, we did establish that as the main topic this evening, Tim, and so we're here to answer any questions. I know that we have several representatives from the donor group this evening, and I believe they have a guest with them. And would you like to start with them, Tim?
Good? Yep.
I mean,
I didn't know if we had any quick topics to get off that,
I have a quick topic under
just if we don't mind.
Sure.
Just so if other people don't have to sit through the whole meeting to get to the end, if we've got some stuff quickly to get through.
Mm-hmm.
I just had something under old business. I see we don't have old business, but the stones that came off from the edifice of the junior high, I talked to Mike Giannini recently. We've been talking about this for a year. What could we do with those stones? How might we reuse those? And one of the thoughts was to reuse them in a front sign addressing Johnstown schools at the corner of Chambers Way and 37. We don't want to rush into that because obviously we'll change the topo a bit of that land before we would actually put a sign there. But it's not too early to start thinking of design. And as we work with Searfoss School or with the renovation project, we're going to need to move those stones or protect what we want to use. So rather than keeping them all out there on the ground, maybe that's a better way. So Mike's going to get back with us, and Lonnie McClish will come and take a look at it, and they're going to design something. We have some previous designs that we had already done, so if they can incorporate any from this new or the old stones, that would be great. That would be a great project. So
Sounds great. Thank you. Anything else real quick, or anyone else have anything? Okay, that's good.
Okay, so we have brought information to answer any questions you might have relative to the proposed programs. I think the board's been given copies of all the curriculum, job descriptions, finances, everything there. So anything's welcome for discussion this evening on our end. But I do want to recognize our guests here this evening. You know Frank Siegel and Mike Bailey. And Frank, you have a guest here this evening. And if the speakers would come to the lectern, we'd appreciate it. Sure.
Just a real quick background. When we set out to replace a scoreboard, we really were at zero in the learning curve. We realized pretty quickly that it wasn't about, in the long run, it wasn't about a board. And the equipment wasn't about equipment to run a scoreboard, that it was a lot more than that. And we didn't realize that when we first started. And so where it took us was the other schools that have been down this path would take that same equipment and use it extensively in the curriculum. And it just happened to be also used on a Friday night. And so we moved up the curve and we learned that. And so as we reached out to other schools and people who had gone down the path that this district might go down, one of the names that surfaced up was Tom Gregory. And Tom grew up in Gahanna and graduated from Gahanna, I should say, and spent over 30 years there and really made a name for himself in what he did with Gahanna's broadcast studio and the programs they did. And so we thought, what better way than to bring someone here who's been down that path that you may be going down and give you the opportunity to ask questions of him as to what he did and why. I know my big question is, how can all this benefit the students in the district, not just high school, but in the district? What can it do for the teachers? What might it do for the community? And maybe help us help you. What is it that we don't know? Help us understand some of that. So I believe Dale's provided Tom with a draft of the job description and a draft of the curriculum, so he's had a chance to at least be somewhat familiar with that. And we'd be willing to chat about his experiences and share some of the insights. So Tom, welcome to Johnstown. Go Johnnies.
I'll talk just a little about my background, and then certainly feel free to stop me or ask questions. I graduated from Gahanna myself as a student, and journalism was really important to me. They had a high school newspaper then, and that was a passion for me going even into college, and I thought that was something I wanted to continue. And in order to go to college, I went through the Ohio National Guard. They had a program. And in addition to going basic training, I went through a specialty training, which was journalism school for that. And right when I got out, I couldn't necessarily find a job right away. So I went back and got a master's in special ed and did that for a couple of years. And then Gahanna had an opening. And so I applied. I was hired back. And with all my journalism background, they had just started a TV program. It had been around maybe 1.5 years. It was the librarian's dream to start this. She didn't know a lot about it at the time. And I was pulled into that at the same time. I had background in journalism. I had 1 or 2 classes really in broadcast, but not a lot of background. And so we learned as we went along. We didn't have a lot of equipment like you guys are getting, brand new state-of-the-art equipment all at once. We got a little bit of equipment, and I've had all those years that I was there for 30 years. I had to beg and borrow and go to TV stations, Channel 10 every summer, waiting for me to call and take their stuff if they had. But we built the program as we went along. And one of the things we had to do early on was, with a program like that, a lot of people said, well, this is just extra. Why do you don't really need a TV program. It's just, and we had to show them that there was value in what we were doing, and what we were teaching the kids. And what I've had kids, that have graduated and gone on to do unbelievable things. Yes, we did the morning announcements, and we produced a 30-minute weekly show every week. And the kids acted as the reporters and anchors. They went out and got their own video, came back and did their stories. Well, yeah, they learned a lot about how to edit and stuff, but they also learned so much about deadlines, responsibility, putting stuff on the air, and the benefit too that came about was how beneficial it was to the school district, because what we were reporting on was all the unbelievable things that were going on in our school district. So many teachers, and that's true of every district around. So many teachers at elementary, middle school, and high school do unbelievable things, but people don't always hear about it. And so this is a way that you can use this not only as a benefit to the kids in the program, but it's a huge benefit to the district in helping to show all the wonderful things that are going on in your district. And, as we started to do that too, we always had an application for our program when we initially started out. but initially we wanted to get kids in, but we wanted to make it feel like this is a program because we really want to attract responsible kids to the program. We wanted it to feel like this is a added responsibility to be part of this, and so we did. We added an introduction to TV class for the advanced class, and we have speech that that kind of led into that. And that was how we built our program. How you do it, I see, is you're looking to put it at the middle school. My wife is the middle school librarian in Gahanna, and all the middle schools, it's handled by the librarians, have their own little TV morning announcements, and even all the elementaries have that too. And those kind of help to feed our program. As we got farther along, I looked for ways not only for our kids to do our weekly show, but I looked for ways that we can collaborate with other teachers and within the districts because it works. I mean, with what we do, there's so many opportunities. And you guys have that because the buildings are so close together. There's an elementary right next to the high school, and I collaborated with an elementary teacher. She would bring her kids over, and I would use my kids as instructors. She would be teaching a unit on persuasion, and my kids would help to teach that with the kids. And they would either have an election. One year they were doing an election for themselves, and my kids helped them edit videos that they took back and put on their announcements. One time they came up with their own product. My kids helped them come up with an ad campaign, and they took that back. And we also did some collaborations with some of the classes, the health class. We collaborated and did some video projects with the kids with health issues, and we could, the kids in the health class became the experts, and our kids helped to put together videos, PSA kind of videos that were informational, and we could put those out. We also, I think it's really important to combine with the community, and I always try to have at least one major project every year that we did. One year, I came out here to the Cornell School that was right out here, you guys have, and we visited the building and saw the programming they have there. And so we had, one of my kids found that and saw this old garage in front of the YMCA, and we could see it looked like it was a one-room schoolhouse at one time. And so we used the kids helped to fundraise, and we took that building apart and moved it. It's by the high school, and we do exactly what you did, or they did over there for the Cornell School, and our kids were a part of that. We also, we have a Veterans Memorial in front of our high school, and our kids were responsible for helping to fundraise. They helped interview veterans about that, and it helped to see that, I think, the biggest high school memorial, Veterans Memorial in the nation right there, and our kids through that program helped to do that. The other thing we did the past 11 years, my last 11 years before I retired, most of you probably know about Honor Flight, what that is. We sponsored part of an honor flight, and it wasn't an entire honor flight originally because they were smaller, they were a portion of a plane. Now they're actually taking 3 bus loads. But we would raise between $12,000 to $20,000 every year to help sponsor veterans to go to DC for the day. And some of my TV kids would act as guardians, and we would also take a video while they were there and produce a documentary based on that experience for those kids. And so, I mean, we've done multiple different types of projects like that. And so the opportunities that a program like this can have are endless. And the experiences that the kids have in the TV program that have stayed the entire time, I've had kids that have graduated, and I would say 80 to 90% go into something related to it. Now, teaching public relations is related. They may not go become a broadcaster on TV, but I have one student that's his whole dream was to work as a correspondent, at the White House, for the White House. And he actually works for Fox News and is a national correspondent for them at the White House. He's interviewed, he interviewed President, or got to ask President Trump some questions and stuff. So I have a student that is the right now the social media and public relations coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens, and I have these students come back too to show the value in that. And I'll tell you, when he'd only been there a year or two, and the Baltimore Ravens had won the Super Bowl that year, so he had this huge, because the staff get a ring too, not that but he had that on. And you talk about pulling kids in and seeing, and I remember having him as a speech student. He said at that time he wanted to work for ESPN, and you think, well, some people would say, well, that's a nice dream, but who knows if that's going to happen. But my hope always as a teacher is to try and find ways to help kids make their dreams become a reality, whether it becomes the way they truly comes out the way they want it or not. You want to try and help them, see, because a program like this, my own son went through the TV program, and he's right now he's a producer in Dayton. When he first graduated from OU, he got a job in Gloucester. He's a morning anchor and a producer, and he really liked the producing. Plus, his girlfriend is in the Gahanna area, so he's trying to get back this way. And so he just took 6 months ago a producing job in Dayton, Ohio. And I could go on and on. I have people that work in Boise as an anchor, a girl that's in Youngstown as an anchor, and countless people in public relations, even teaching. The value they get from a program like this is not just those skills, but the independence, because the kids have to be independent and go out and get this video. They have to meet all kinds of deadlines, and the kind of creativity that they are able to do on a program like this is so wonderful. And it's the kind of thing it took a lot of time on my part at a time, but it was so rewarding. It was rewarding because it was so fun to be involved in that creativity with the kids. So I could go on and talk about lots of stuff, but I wondered if you had questions for me about the program, the opportunities. I know number of districts have programs like this, but you have to do what's going to work for your district, and that may take on a different look. But I can tell you there are benefits to the entire student body in being able to communicate, being able to connect, and that was really important to me at a school besides in Gahanna, because the one disadvantage you have at a school like Gahanna, we have one high school, we have 2,800 students in the high school. I made it a point because we still want all kids to feel like they are valued, that they're important, and it's easy for a student to feel like they can get lost in that. And one of the things that we were able to do with the morning announcement and TV program was to try and show that, to give each person a chance, to have a chance to be seen a little more.
So Tom, you started this program at its base.
I came in, it had just been like a year and a half since started, at the very, very beginning. And the woman that, the librarian that started it was there another 5 years, and then it just became my program. And I was there till I retired, basically a year and a half ago.
And to this day, I don't think Gahanna has a video board in their stadium.
No, and actually, they had talked about that the last couple years. They talked about doing that, and I think somehow it didn't materialize at that point. They have the person that took my place now, and we just, they had a levy that just got approved for a new high school. So I am guessing that something like that possibly may be in the mix, coming up in the next few years.
Sure, and you are a modest person, I've heard. That's first we've met, but I hear from Frank that your programs have won quite a few awards over the years.
Kids have done really well. There's a lot of opportunities. There's the Student Television Network, and a lot of these things you can belong to, and they have conferences, national conferences that you can go to. If you can't go to them, there's still contests that you can send things in, and you can network with other teachers. before that, the Journalism Education Association and NSPA, they have been around a long time because they started out for high school newspapers. But they added, as journalism has changed, they added a whole broadcast branch to that, and I was involved in that. And our kids went to the national convention every year. And the nice thing about that, they would bring in people from all over, experts from all over, that would speak to the kids. But I try to do that myself in the school, as I have been there a while. I always tried to show my kids it's important to be involved in the community and to give back to the community. And then when they graduate, I said, I want you to give back to the program that gave your start. And I asked them to do that, whether it's virtually or coming back and talking to the students. Because as a teacher, you can say so much, but when you have another student who went through and that was in the seats where they are, even though I was in the seats where they don't see me that way as a teacher, didn't see me that way as a teacher, it can have such a stronger impact. And when a student that was in my room can say what this program did for them and the opportunities they had, because of it, that has a huge impact.
Over the years, Tom, did you find that teachers, say language arts teachers, math teachers, other teachers would make use of this technology and make use of your program? Was there some cross-curriculum work that you could
Yes,
describe
there was. And yes, and it was funny too, that when we did the Veterans Memorial up front, there's one teacher at the high school, he's a great history teacher, but he and I would butt heads a little bit because he didn't see the value in the program. He thought, well, putting all this money, how is that? And what was interesting, his son went into he wasn't at Gahanna, but went into TV and film. But then I got a grant through we had a student that was in Iraq, killed in Iraq, and the kids didn't know how to deal with this. They didn't know, and as teachers, we didn't know. And they wanted to do something, but we didn't know what. I wrote a grant, and we needed to have the history teachers part of it. Wonderful history teacher, so we ended up working together. And we ended up, it was interesting too, because I was just thinking we would have this fancy plaque kind of thing on the wall, huge plaque, and but the kids wanted to do this huge memorial. And at first I thought, we can't do that. But then we said, why squash their dreams? We let them talk about it. We'll see. And so it just got rolling. And then we have an architecture from Eastland at the high school. And they came up with a design. And then as we were doing that, there's a Techstone granite company that's on Agler Road near us. They came in and they were going to donate all this granite at cost. And all of a sudden, this started happening. And it was all, because of the students had this, idea, this dream. We kept allowed it to keep going rather than squash it. And through that whole process, the history teacher and I we're great friends, but he certainly saw the value all of a sudden. At the same time we were doing that, a Lima company, I don't know if it was a while back, came back, and that company, the Marine, had lost more. And I remember the kids said, well, we need to come to that when they come back. And I said, well, I don't know, because we're going to have to be at school. So I said, well, we'll see. I went up to the principal. I said, yeah. And so there was CNN and all these other, and there was us. And we covered that. And the kids did a story based on that, and the kids that were there. There was a program called Channel 1 News for a while, and the story they did was the first place nationally for Channel 1 News that year. And a film company did a video on Lima Company later on for HBO, and they somehow come across us and what we did and asked to use our footage. And I said, well, if you give the two students credit at the end of the video, and they paid the kids, I think, forget $1,000 each, if I remember, each use that video, and some of their video and their names are the last names on there, but they got credit for that. And so there's just all kinds of opportunities, and those aren't opportunities, I would have thought when I first got involved in something like this. But the value that the program has is amazing. What you'll be able to do and the opportunities that kids will have. And it's not just kids that just go into journalism or video production, but just those skills are valuable in so many other areas. Yeah.
Thanks.
Hi, Tom. Thanks for coming
Oh.
today, Tom. Appreciate it. I went to Chapel Field Elementary, and
Oh, yeah.
the morning announcements was one of my favorite things. Just throwing that out there. No doubt to me that there's value in a lot of things. I already have my brain going as to how it could tie in to government, and if we did mock trials. I mean, I see very widely how this can be used. One question I had was, what percentage of the commitment for the students would you say could be accomplished during school hours versus outside of school hours? And what, if any, challenges did you have with some kids with other commitments being able to make it? I mean, I know with all schooling, there's things they have to do outside of
You
the
mean
building.
the time
Just,
frame that the kids
yeah.
have? Well, again, there was class, so there's a advanced class, advanced broadcasting class. The kids have that time to do it, and it functioned, at least how I did it. This was my advanced students. When you think of the newspaper staff, where you come in and you meet with kids, but the kids basically work. They have time to work. During that time, they might get video, they might be editing. There's an added responsibility with the kids that take the class, just like in the newspaper class too. If they're going to get video, the room also, I had a separate classroom, so the kids, but the studio was right there, so the kids could work while I was teaching speech class, or I was teaching something else. They could come back and work while that was going on. They would have to get a pass signed, and things and I told them they cannot just miss an academic class, but if they have a study hall or they have a lunch, I got to school early, and so if they wanted to come before school, or sometimes kids could come after school when I'm staying there. So I tried to make that room available for them, as much as I could. But I also told them, though, the stories that they were assigned, they had those stories in advance. And the way I structured it, when we did a half-hour weekly show, there was about 12 stories on each show, and I had about 30 students in the class. Well, they didn't necessarily have a story every week. Right? They might have a story on average every other week. There might be 2 weeks where they had one, and so they need to plan ahead, because I schedule those stories in advance. And so, and I would get on the pace. I'd say, and this is where they learn responsibility
Right.
too, because if they put that off, just like procrastinating something else, they have to get it done. Everyone else relies on that. That show has to get done. Now, one thing I did do was I had all of the students in the class do a backup story, what I call an evergreen story that could air at any time, so that if an emergency came up or something, then I could put that in. But I let them know an emergency is a death in the family or you being really sick, not because you waited too long to get it done. We couldn't use a story for that. You had to find a way to get it done. And if you didn't, and I had to use an evergreen because of that, then you're not following through with the contract. And I made all the kids sign a contract up front. I'll give you this. This is just a handbook that I, over the years, developed of stuff that I did. But I made them sign a contract that they would meet those deadlines. And if they didn't, at one point, I had a backup story that I could put in, but then I talked to them. And their parents had to sign the contract too. And I said, it's a privilege that you're in here. It's an added responsibility. And I have to be able to rely on you being able to get stuff done. And it's not just affecting me, it affects everyone else on staff. Because if everybody did that, we couldn't have a show. And the students could be put on probation. And then if it happened a second time, they could either be removed from the class, or if they couldn't be removed from the class, they could be in the class, they could do stories, they would never air on the show because they lost that responsibility because I couldn't depend on them. Usually, it didn't take a lot. You know, you talk to a kid, put them on probation once, and I think in 35 years, I only had to remove 2 students from the class just because they were not able to be. And I think they saw at the semester time this wasn't working out for them either, because I wanted them to see this is not just a fluff class. Yes, it's fun and creative, but everybody in here is depending on you, and so it's not just. And I would have kids coming in, even if they were not going to be able to make all their classes that day or whatever, because they had a doctor's appointment later in the day for some dentist appointment or something. And normally they take a half day off. They would come in and get their story done before they went to their,
Tom, you've described projects inside and outside of the school. I wonder if during those years, was this program and this equipment used to help the school tell their story about internal programs? I mean, could the superintendent walk down to you, the kids, and say, "Hey, I've got a project for you. This is going on at the elementary, and would you go?"
Yeah.
Or were there opportunities for you to help Gahanna tell their story?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, but I always wanted to be able to have, the control to make those choices, because the problem is you could have 1 million people who want you to do tons of things, and you know what I mean? And so, yes, we would do some things helping scheduling out. One thing my students did every year, we did, like I said, a weekly half-hour show, but one of our shows was an hour where they went through and looked at the programs that the high school offered, all the programs. We'd do a story on that, and then the whole show was around that. And that would be something you could show to, especially even at the around scheduling time, or you could show the middle school students before they come to high school all the opportunities that might help scheduling and stuff. So certainly, yes, there are things, but what you have to avoid in something like that is when you have a program like that is I would have teachers come down and say, I have a student teacher here that's got this, or can you tape my wedding video or whatever? And I said, no, this is, but people don't think about that. They think the TV stuff, and they think, oh, well, you can do.
Well, and my thought is, I don't know how we do scheduling at the high school or middle school, and if we are giving descriptions of classes, but I think it's really important if we go forward that we sort of set the stage for the expectation for this. And that, whether we decide to do a contract or not doesn't matter, but the expectation of doing the work, and that there's going to be, I just think that's really important to put out there so that we can weed through those who think it might be an EVA or just something that's fun, which is probably going to be fun, but there's also a big commitment to it as well.
Right.
Especially if there's going to be time required potentially outside of class, because my understanding is we're looking at really adding how we can incorporate our athletics. So that's going to be evenings and weekends. And so I think setting that stage that is a huge part of this is important.
But how many students did you maintain in that class? I know you said you had 2,800 students, probably today's numbers, I'm not sure, but appreciably larger than ours. What was your average class
Here's how we did
size?
it.
And I had one more question.
Oh, sorry.
Hooked onto that, what is the measurement that you use to say that the child or the student had attained an A, B, C? How do I know how well my child is doing in that class?
Well, they got grades on their stories. I have a rubric in here of things I looked at: the quality of their video, their audio, the organization of their, there's a rubric of 10 things I looked at on each of their stories, grade-wise. And what was your first question?
How many?
How many? How we started. Now, again, ours is different than how yours is set up. But what we had at Gahanna was speech was required. It was required when I went there. So, and it was basically a 9th or 10th grade requirement. So that was our initial. But you might have as a beginning communication class or whatever. That's what we used. And then what I did was the kids that would take, we would have an intro to TV class. It was just a semester class. And they had to apply to be part of that class. And part of the application There was questions to answer, and they had to get teacher recommendation, and there's a place for teachers to fill out comments. And I have, again, the form in here. Some of the stuff's pretty. But then I could go to those teachers, and you can still do that. If you have a speech class, you can go to, kids can fill out a recommendation form and have teachers sign up, and then that you can go to those teachers. And what I was looking at, not just communication building, I cared about that, but I can help kids develop that. But what I needed was kids that are responsible and dependable, because I didn't want just there's certain students I would not want to have a camera running around school getting video, because I want the equipment to last, and there's a responsibility that I have for the district and whatever we put, out there on the air. So in the intro class, I would take, again, because of the size, I would take around 30 kids, which is a big class. But I also took into account that, we had 2,800 kids involved. Now, they have lots of other options, at a school that size as well, but still, many of those students that we really want for our program are also being pulled by other people that want them too. And in the advanced class, I also have 30 kids. But in addition, I had a lot of things that they did within the class. It wasn't just the show.
Could I interrupt just one second?
Uh-huh.
Did you mean you have a set curriculum then within each age group or each talent group, or however you want to define that?
The curriculum for the intro class was based, we broke it down as they were doing editing. We talked about how I did it first, is we did anchoring at first, because I wanted to show the importance of audio, because a lot of kids want to just run around with the camera first thing, but I wanted to show that you got to have something to say first. And so we talked about audio and anchoring in front of the camera first, and then we went out and did video, and I had them take just a few shots in the studio itself. Then after they did that, I would have them go out now and we would critique that. I would have them go, and I would have teachers that had classes that had action kind of things going on, and I would talk to those teachers first, like phys ed class, art class, a music class. I would break the students down, and they would go into those classrooms, videotape just a little bit, and bring that video back. Then we would critique that. Then I would talk about how to do a storyboard, and then they would take the video that they got from those classes and develop a storyboard from that video, and I would grade that. Then, once they were done with that, I would edit the video with the storyboard they created, and we would create their initial story. Now, I didn't let them, the first time I did it, I didn't have them do interview. I just had them get video, and they would do a basic stand-up video and voiceovers with it, just for their initial first-time editing. Then we would talk about interviews and what it takes to do a good interview, because that is a whole big process in itself. And I would have them practice that in the room, and then I would have them go out and we would critique those things. It would all build to their final culmination in the intro class was to produce like 2.5-minute story that the advanced class is doing every week. And what I did was I took the intro class, if it had 30 kids, it might be 2 or 3 shows, and the last 3 shows of the year would be their final exams, and they would have to do, the whole goal was to get them prepared to take the advanced class. You know what I'm saying? So they would do everything leading up to what the advanced students do, just a little bit. They would do everything so they were ready when they took the advanced TV class. The advanced TV class, we would do some teaching and learning as we went along, but a lot of what they were doing was producing, when you think of a newspaper staff, they would be producing that throughout. So there would be a lot more time in there for them to work independently on the assignments that they were doing. And not all of them would have a story every week, pretty much every other week, but we also had long-term projects that some of the kids were working on in addition to stories. We also did PSAs, because we did the morning announcements as well, and short little public service announcements on clubs and stuff that are going around in the district, and they would do that. And those, they could be kind of funny and humorous in appropriate ways that they can't really do in news stories. One of the things I had to show them up front is we patterned our our news program as a news program. It was not like Saturday Night Live or a bunch of jokes, or comedy skits. I told them, no, we're not doing that. It's going to be professional. It's going to look good. That's what we expect. But they could do some of that creative, but some humor type things within good taste on the PSAs. And they were expected to do PSAs every so. What was funny too, I thought, I required them to do at least 2 or 3 PSAs every week, but the kids, when they got into it, they would do, a lot of them would do way more than that, and the kids ended up doing more work than I even asked them to do because it was fun for them and they could see how, the response they'd get after they put something on the air and people would see it and appreciate it. Yes. The goal, because what they could do, okay, so we took speech, either the 9th or 10th grade. Then you would have the intro class, and they had to apply for that. Then from the intro class, they had to apply to the advanced TV class. But I worked with all the intro kids, so the biggest time I would figure out where kids would go on with the program or not is going from speech into the intro to TV. Once they're in the intro to TV class, almost all those kids would go on to advanced class unless there was an issue. That was pretty easy to figure out for those kids and us as we were going along. Then the kids had the opportunity, if they took speech as a 9th grader, to take the advanced class again. And those kids would end up being leaders. We did some other things with those kids. We also produced a video yearbook, and those kids kind of led that in the class, and that was something that was ongoing that we did each year. Yeah, the kids could do special documentaries. They also could apply to do some special projects. Some kids on their own would come up with things. I had a student do a history of Lincoln High School. That's the kid now that works at Fox News National. And it was done almost 20 years ago, and it's actually really done really, really well. Yes, yeah. Initially, as we started out, it's hard because kids don't know the program, they don't know what to expect. And so you got to have people in there initially because and then as they see what the kids do and they put out the work, it becomes more and more selective. And that's I think that's what you want. It isn't that you want to keep kids from being in the program, but you want to attract good kids as you're doing it. And so quality is really important, and so early on, I didn't probably do as many projects as we were able to do later on. But it's just, when you put out quality work, then you get kids that really want to be part of the program. One of the things you guys are lucky about is the kind of equipment you have. I was always struggling, to get equipment in there, and it took a long time to get to the point where I had the equipment that, I mean, you guys have, honestly, you're going to have better equipment than we have now at Gahan in some ways. We have, because of the numbers we have, the edit stations we have, I don't know how many you have. We'll have heard half the IMAX that we have, but that took just, me, my last couple of years to have that. So, the kids coming in here are going to be really lucky with the kind of equipment that you're able to have. But the creativity that this can do and the kind of things you can do, it's beyond what you can even imagine. And even probably what I can imagine, because communities are all different, and the kind of projects that might be important to the communities are all different. But there's value, I can guarantee you. You don't always know the value. I remember once I had a woman, she was one of the parents, and she had brain cancer, and I remember hearing she was so happy that she was able to see her son use something. We had reported on some sporting event or something, and she was in the hospital able to see that because she couldn't go to the event. And you don't think about those things, but those are things that are important, and you don't realize that until you have a program like that. There's countless examples. We take graduation, and not everybody can graduate or not get to graduation. And even if you can have everybody there might be relatives that are out of town and can't come, but they're a grandparent can see that might be their first grandchild graduate school because you can stream that and allow them to be able to see that. So.
One of the things, oh, sorry, go ahead, Ann. I asked.
Thank you for coming tonight to speak with us too. But I was wondering, so when you first started out, I know it was you probably developing it with the middle school librarian, is what I understand from what you said. As you developed it further, did you need more help? Is there more teachers that would
Need more help?
more teachers
More
or
staff to run the
No,
program.
well, there was, when we first did it, there was two addendums, I will say, for the program edition. And I had one, and there was another person, another teacher that worked with me that had it. The problem became, it was good for a while with one teacher when they stayed. The problem became then when the turnover happened for me to train someone to do that. It was so time consuming, it was easier for me to do it. And what ended up happening was I just took on the second addendum then at that point. It just ended up being easier because you want people to be there. You want to grow a program. It's really important to get someone that's there and continues to be the same person.
right? The other question I had, you said that you had a journalism background when you entered into teaching. Do you have a journalism class at Gahanna?
Yes, we do. We have a newspaper staff and we have a yearbook staff. The sad thing is our newspaper staff is a flood now. It's gone away. Now, part of that is journalism itself has become, the other part was just the program itself and how it was done.
Okay. Right.
But we have now something that's outside, But it's interesting. It's probably better in some ways that I had that journalism background because writing, you talk about TV and film. Writing is really important. And the kids need to know that up front going in. And, I hear that from my son who's producing all the time, how, he talks about how important it is. And even when I would take my kids on, every year I would take my intro class after we've been far enough along, I would take them to WCVO, it's a Christian radio station right in Gahanna. We would take a tour there, and then we would go down and watch the new news done live and take a tour there, and they would constantly tell them that one of my former students is the news director at Channel 10, and so she would be able to pull some strings, but it just, they see that it's not just, you think of the glamour involved, some of them, when they think about TV, and I need to tell them up front, there's a lot of work, and writing is, you got to be able to write. You got to have something to say, and you got to be able to say it in the right way. And then the video, yes, is important and powerful, but if you don't have the other, it doesn't matter what video you have or anything else. And so I always start out talking about audio and talking about writing up front. And I saw in some of the stuff you sent me that how you designed your curriculum is very much that way, and that's really, I think, the right way to go. I think that's important.
Yes, you may not have had the equipment, but you had some strong curriculum feeder courses that were of great help to you. You've mentioned journalism several times. I think of your newspaper staff, speech. Again, I don't know how you incorporated language arts, but I would think the writing and language arts and journalism would be a happy family. So you had a lot of good preparatory courses that we don't have all those courses here yet. So some of them we need to.
You may, but sometimes some of those things can be incorporated within the classes. Even though we have a speech class, we have a semester speech class. That's it. And yeah, it's nice to have that, but that's not enough. I mean, when we talk about speech, when we talk about the curriculum, and I said that along, and we devised talking about communication from kindergarten through the whole district, sharing up front. That's speech. Kids have to share in kindergarten doing that. And so even if you don't have a speech class, there's I'm sure you have a ninth grade English class that could have a unit in there where the kids, speak about something they're reading or whatever. It certainly could be, if it isn't already, it could be incorporated in what you're already doing and add to it. Because speaking and all of this is collaborates with almost anything that you teach. Even when I talk about TV production and video, there's so many opportunities for collaboration with the TV production. There's so many ways that can do lots of different things. So many ways I've collaborated over the years with different teachers and different programs.
Now, did you teach a speech class as well then while you were there?
That's what I mostly taught.
Okay.
So could you give us a general idea of how many of each classes are?
Yeah. No, that's where I was going.
How many of your speech and how many intro classes and how many advanced?
That I taught?
In one day? Like how many periods is?
I taught 6 periods a day.
Okay.
But I taught speech mostly, and speech was just a semester, so I had. I only had one semester introduction to TV class, and I always asked that to be second semester because I wanted kids to remember when we started back up the following year. Just to me, but you could have. I could have. I guess. I had 30 in a class, and I could have petitioned them to try and just do 15 and 15 or divide that up. But the problem would be, especially the kids the first semester, they would have forgotten a lot. And the one thing that I had by teaching speech, I was not the only speech teacher there again, but I could go to those teachers and ask. I knew what kids, and I could always find kids, and I was always asking for kids. Because a lot of times kids are not necessarily going to sign up for TV production on their own because it's not something they've ever even thought about necessarily. So in my speech class, I would, after a few speeches, I might encourage them. And even if you don't have a speech class, if people know you have a program like that, and you can, whoever you get to teach the class, they will be hopefully being able to go out and talk to the teachers, 9th grade or 10th grade teachers, or the middle school even teachers, because you've got programs in middle school to try and encourage kids and see what kids would benefit.
So the way you were set up, your second semester of the 11th grade year, you'd have intro to, and then your first semester of your senior year, they do the advanced?
The advanced is year long.
Oh, it's a year long.
The intro was, speech is a 9th or 10th grade requirement. Basically, it's a floating requirement. We encourage kids
9th
to
or
take it
10th,
their 9th
yeah.
or 10th grade. The advantage, if they take it their 9th or 10th grade, then they can take the intro 10th or 11th.
Right.
If they take the intro class in 10th grade, then they could take the advanced year-long class 2 years.
2 years.
As
Okay.
opposed to just one.
It might be a good place to interject, and I think that maybe we can call on Derek to correct me if I'm wrong here, but we have speech embedded within our curriculum. Okay, we have no speech class per se. My understanding, and Derek, please chime in here if I state any of this incorrectly. My understanding is that at 10th grade language arts, we have a 4-week section of that class dedicated solely to speech and speech production. 11th grade, thank you. 4 to 6, okay. Then we had, was it 35 students this year that have taken CPI speech, which is a semester class at the college level. So we have students actively involved in speech classes at the college level. My understanding also it is, I believe it's Mr. Riley's social studies classes, that he has requirements of speech embedded within his curriculum where students have to take positions and stand up and deliver a persuasive speech involving history.
What grade level is that?
That's a senior. That's like a junior
Senior
class.
Yes, that's the upper level.
I guess
right.
the only thing I'm hearing that I have a little bit of concern is we're late. You know what I mean? 11th and 12th grade to do something.
Yep. Yeah.
I would think I was kind of trying to figure out what you did the rest of the day.
I was busy.
Is that the Hannah Grill?
No, no.
But no, in all honesty, my question to you is how, because most of the streets that our kids get, senior year, they and the full music on it, and a lot of the seniors are getting. But how important was that your program that it kind of happened?
I don't think we have to. I mean, not every, I mean, I agree. I mean, a lot of other speech is not required in most schools. Very few schools. I think it's great that we require it. I feel strongly about that. It's great. I see it, and that's good that they put it off, and then by the time they become adults, you can see people that are almost phobic. My father-in-law taught speech classes on the stage. Just cry because they didn't need speech, you know. And not that you shouldn't be afraid. Not that any, you know, I'm nervous even coming here when I tell a kid, you know, it's natural to be nervous, but and so the biggest thing they get from speech class is content. But you don't need that to have a program like this. But what you need is something to be able to, you know, a teacher to be able to, you know, go to, you know, a ninth grade year, or maybe even earlier than that, to see what kids are responsible, what kids have a knack. You can tell certain kids that are more outgoing than others that this would be something that would be you know, foster a talent that they have. And so I don't think we have to have a speech class.
So when we met a few times about this, and one of the things, you know, it's interesting to me, really, class, but like introductory class, and then advanced class, in so many.
But that was my choice. Understand too. Here's my choice. And the person at my place is he wants to be TV the whole day, and he hasn't got it. He's trying to get away from speech, and he's got a sports class going and a documentary class and all that. Here's why I did it. I was thinking of quality rather than quantity. The more classes you have like that, you've got to fill those classes. I mean, what you don't want to put yourself in a situation that I only have 3 kids in a class, and then I have to justify to that history teacher why he's got 30 and I only have 3. And then it makes it harder as a teacher too to find things to do. You know, you're limited in what kinds of things you can do. So I made a choice. Now that choice made it difficult in some ways. Having 30 intro kids in class is really, really hard with the kinds of things that these kids work on. A lot of times, people wouldn't even have the space to be able to do that. I mean, I was lucky because we had a, you know, huge. We didn't have the equipment like we did, but we had. We didn't when I first started. We had a classroom with a. It was just like a custodian closet back that we took over, and that was our control room. And then we moved the desk aside, and that was our. But then in 1995, a principal, or a superintendent, his son was part of the TV program too, and he said, "Well, what would you dream?" And I told him I wanted to have my own classroom and this studio here at the same time that I didn't, and that's what I got the space. I didn't get the equipment, and overall I had to fight for that.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because one of the things we looked at was like basically 8 course pathway, like a first semester, second semester, like first semester, second semester, sophomore, junior, and senior, so it basically is one teacher. Technically, 8 different in this field kind of classes. So I kind of wonder what you're talking about.
Understandably hard for me today, knowing their school and comparing it to my school, knowing what the kids that I wanted for my program was what everybody else wanted too, and I had to find a way to pull those kids in. What Mark, who took my place, did, and I kind of warned him against doing it, because it might not, in the long run, it may end up being really good for him. It was a struggle. He made it a double block. And I said, that's great, except there's going to be a lot of kids that can't take it because they can't give up that much kind of time. Not all the kids that take my class are going to go on to production. I mean, I have kids that, but they benefit from it. They did some unbelievable things, and it benefits them in so many ways beyond production. But they couldn't necessarily give up 2 periods like that. Because the kind of kids I had were taking AP this and AP that, and they had a lot of singleton classes they were taking. And so, and I was kind of stuck because we did not stuck, but we did the morning announcements too. And so that's the period that I had. I wanted to have it during the time when we did the announcements so that I had kids. I didn't want to rely on kids remembering to come down to the room because, and I didn't want to have to run around and work, I couldn't do that because I was teaching. So, and I didn't want to have to then pull my speech kids in and put them up there because I didn't have anyone else, because that's not fair to those kids. So I wanted to do it in that period. And it just, because we had it that way so long, kids kind of knew, and all those singleton classes kind of worked out. So I don't know if that answers your question, but for me to answer, how that would work, what
Sounds like 8 classes, maybe
school is,
ambitious.
what inside.
I think we've got an overkill right now.
The kids that I have that takes TV, some of those are the same kids that want to do theater,
Yeah.
want to take DECA,
Too
and
many.
it's hard, and they have to make some choices. I
And
try
I
as
still
much as
haven't
I
heard the
can to
accountability.
overlap where
How do I know
can.
how well you did?
Right.
I'd take it too if I didn't.
Yeah, Derek, we were just talking. It sounds like we're over ambitious with that 8. That might have to be
Yeah.
more like a 4. You know what I mean?
Grow it.
That's just considering how many students we also have. If he's got 2,800 students in that population to choose from, we may have trouble filling 8 in Justify. We may have that teacher with 3 kids in there, and that'd be a little hard to justify those classes for that many. So that may be something we have to look at as a group, as how many
Well,
we would offer.
understand too, when you first start, I was selective at first, or no, later, but it was at first, I just needed to get.
Right, you're filling seats.
As much as possible, because kids don't know.
Right.
And so you just got to try to get kids in, and then you build from that. And so we didn't do some of the big ambitious projects we did. I didn't do initially because I was trying to learn. I was learning this stuff along with the kids early on. And then when we changed programs, because when I started, we were doing tape to tape editing. It wasn't digital, it was tape to tape. And you can imagine, that was I did that for a long time. I did that for probably.
Where did your weekly show air? When you said you show weekly shows?
Columbus, they have an educational access channel. And
Okay.
anyone has access to that. I just had to take it down there once a week. That was another thing I could do, drop it off. And then I took a copy of the show, and there was a guy in the city who developed a HANA TV. They had churches had a place to put stuff on. They gave a school channel. We would drop our shows off and it would air there as well. In addition to that, we did the daily announcements. Now, what the person that took over for me has done is just made that announcement time his show.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Well, one other thing, and I brought this. This is just something that you might think about. I know this is from the ODE website. This is from a while back. I know they've done this now because we've had this. There is they have the honors diploma for a lot of different things, but there's an arts honors diploma as well. And we were able to incorporate, a lot of people just think that's, which it is, but it also could be theater. It can also be TV production. The kids have to fill the requirements here, but that's something, that you could think about with your program, as well when you're doing that. And it certainly fits in with all the stuff that you've done. And like I said, I'll leave here a copy of this book. Some of this may not apply. Some of this is things I've done, examples I've done, the rubric that I used to grade some different things, some of the sample storyboards that I, had kids do, application, stuff that I had developed over the years. Certainly, you can look at a lot of times, someone may want to develop some of their own stuff, but sometimes it's easier to develop your own things that fit you based looking at what someone else has done. So I certainly will leave this, and I can leave this from the ODE website for about the honors diploma. This is from a while back, so this says draft, but they definitely, because I've had kids use that.
You've definitely given us a lot of food for thought and a place to start, and that's what we're
Absolutely.
looking for.
Right.
And my other question comes to mind, how does this blend with our CCP courses? Are we seeing kids going into broadcasting or into communications? And if so, what courses would be beneficial to integrate with that? I don't know, but just, there's my storyboarding, I don't know. So we need to get together and talk about those things.
I think we should, if we go forward with this, we need to set where we're at now, and then that's how we measure success of our kids going into those fields. If we start offering something, we better,
so.
look at where we're actually, what students are going into that now compared to if
Remember
we offer
too,
these types.
that not all of my kids would go into broadcast or even public relations. But if you talk to any of them, they will say the skills that they used benefited them in so many different
I often
ways.
say the two most important classes I took in school, high school were speech and typing,
Exactly.
which I never wanted to do either of them. I mean, I type every day, and public speaking is very important. So, two classes I did not look forward to. I don't think so. I think that's what we have to talk about is, no. I think we just want to look at how do you measure success in some of those fields. We've got to decide what those are.
And how do we measure what the student is accomplishing? I still have, and it may be in the paperwork you brought, so I'll be anxious to read that.
You
But
mean just the
if I'm
grading
getting
of
an A in
scores?
your class in broadcast, whatever it's called, or
Well,
intro
they
to
get
communications,
they get graded on their storyboards. But the biggest thing is they'll get graded on their,
You have it in the packet, though. You have the
Yeah,
rubric
I
in there.
Okay.
We'll make copies for everybody.
Okay.
I
there's
just haven't
different
seen it.
rubrics
That's what I
in
was
here,
trying to
but
say to him. I haven't seen it.
the one here, I graded on the stand-up. I would like to do a stand-up in the story. It didn't have to be the beginning. Voiceovers, the development of the story, the organization, video quality, the quality of the they have, edits, working as a team, and they went through it, professionalism, the voice going through it, content. I go to nature, content, all of the same. Both the variety, enthusiasm, in the story and the voiceover, creativity, and the closing. Those are two different categories, and they were rated. I put superior was a 10 and poor was a 6. And so basically, which means, well, they could never fail. Well, yeah, but I didn't expect anyone to get less than a A or B on anything they did, because if they did, then we would have a discussion and say, this is going on here, I expect quality. So most of the kids that I got would get A's in the class, but I expected them mostly to get A's because that's the kind of work that I expected from them. And because if they weren't getting that kind of grade in an intro class, I would wonder, should they truly be able to go on? And the kids understood that. And so the kids always found a way. And one thing I never missed a show. 35 years, we did a weekly show every week. Never missed a show. And we had snow days and things like that, and then I had to move up their deadlines. And it would be a little hectic and everything else. But we never missed a weekly show.
The one thing that we're missing is in college today, everyone has to take communication classes. Okay. And whether you're an engineer or you're anything, you're in a communication class. So when we start looking at how this is applicable, you've got to remember everyone today, communication is so important. Even my children that are in medical school, right? They have classes on how to communicate to people. So when you look at communication, it's not just the major itself. And there's a lot of students that go into and major in communication, but those same skills are applied across all disciplines that are out there.
I tell my speech kids that it's even, well, all my kids, it's even more important now, because how do kids communicate even now? They want to just do it, text it over.
Yeah.
They don't want to do,
No
so
one talks.
communication in many ways is more important now than it has ever been, because kids aren't used to doing that face-to-face,
And-
one-on-one communication.
And the other part too is everything is going remote, right? Everything's over computer, over Zoom, over
Right.
different mediums, okay?
So to not prepare our students to function in that new environment, I think is something that we need to really consider as we go forward, because the world is changing, right? And TV is one thing, but everyone's having to use all these mediums today in order to communicate and to be effective in whatever jobs they choose to be in. And I think something like this can give you some preparation for as you go forward and use those same skills in whatever profession you choose.
I had two thoughts, and I'm not 100% sure that there's a question here. But I was thinking, with the amount of students you had, around 60, they're all going to be touching that equipment.
Oh.
So I'm thinking you're right. There's a big difference for longevity of 60 students versus 8 periods of kids who are touching it, and it's going to last longer, But then my other thought, too, is because some is, during the day, or I would assume some of those sort of empty periods, students would come in during a study hall and borrow equipment to do it for this or that. So I'm thinking if we're taking up, 6 out of 8 periods where the equipment needs to be used in the class, that's not going to leave time for kids who need to come in and hop and do a quick minute, 2-minute video during study hall and stuff. So I'm just thinking for scheduling and stuff, I think it does make sense to maybe have some off periods. Otherwise, too many people are needing that equipment.
Excellent.
I want to express our appreciation for you taking the time to come. And Frank, thanks for inviting Tom to be here with us tonight. The information is invaluable.
No, I appreciate any school that's taking the step to go into the video production. Anyway, it was because of the way the equipment is anymore. I think there's so many benefits that you'll see as a district that you would have never thought. I mean, yes, there's advantages for the kids in the actual program, but there's a lot of advantages that you'll see that the district has. When you have the new principal and they can do a story to meet the new principal and get a package on there and put that on the air. If the principal would jump on announcements and be able to talk to all the student body when they want to, they just then say, "Can I talk to you today because something came up?" or whatever. There's just countless things. I probably can't even think of all of them where it's benefited the school. And even though we've had levy cycles where schools have struggled with times and everything else, they haven't gotten rid of the TV program. They've seen the value as we've had it over the years. To have one that's been there for now 30, 35 years is a long time. So I think you'll see the benefit that you'll find with what you're able to do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I would share, in addition to that we realize Gahanna is a large school, large program, and over 35 years, Tom has built a remarkable program. National award winner sitting right there for his programming, and that's kind of like the top end. We've also studied over the past year other schools more our size. We've taken a look at Miami Trace, which has audio-video department. They operate the scoreboard and also teach during the day. Upper Arlington, obviously, about 2,700 students. Also operates broadcast studio. Probably the one most like it would be Jonathan Alder. Jonathan Alder has about 2,700 students. They operate not only a large video board as part of a larger stadium renovation, and their board raised money for not only the board but the entire, pretty much like we did, only they brought the board into the turf and the stadium renovation project. And what they did was they set up a structure for donors that would receive in exchange for their donations on this broader project, advertising on the board over a period of years. And that's all broken out on spreadsheets so I can share with you. But in talking to Gary Chapman, their superintendent, learned a lot about their program. They do have a production teacher on staff, again, more our size. Miami Trace too. Miami's about 2,600 students. But at Jonathan Alder, they have their production teacher. They also, in addition to this, which I think is pretty big for them, is to have a communications director, and both of them have background in audio video. And that's more of a district level position that they had. But their production teacher then is paid a stipend to serve as, what they call her, serve as a digital content specialist. And then that production teacher also works the events, staffs, works the events, help produce events for the district, be that athletics or arts or whatever the event is, graduation. So there are other districts our size out there as well doing audio video production, certainly not to the television level of a Gahanna. That's a possibility down the road as we grow. But I think Tom hit the nail on the head when he talked about the skills that students will pick up from having been exposed to this type of a program. And that's what we're after. You've heard me talk about relevance a lot. And, you know, when we can take what the children are learning in the content areas and give them an opportunity to apply those skills in hands-on fashion in developing a production using their language arts skills or helping the district tell the story about the good things that they're doing, then I think the district as a whole benefits. So just really appreciate your comments, Tom. But I wanted the board also to understand there's other districts. We'd love to get out and see all these. We had these last summer, actually last spring. I think some of you remember the invitation to go down to Logan, and COVID hit, and we haven't been able to go out and see them physically, but we do have the information from their programs. And also the board's asked about marketing, but I don't think you wanted to get into that with the marketing of the board. We have a lot of information there from these districts that I've mentioned. So again, I'll open it up to any questions you might have about the program. Point being, we got to the point in this project where, you remember last summer, the issue equipment-wise was, do we invest $89,000 in a head-end system for the stadium to run a scoreboard, or do we raise more funds and put a production studio in that can be part of our curriculum and help more students and leave a legacy of learning for Johnstown for many, many years to come? And it just seemed on the donors' part that they wanted to be about the learning experiences they leave for children, wanted to be more than a scoreboard. And I've tried to articulate that to you since that time. And so we certainly have brought to you information related to curriculum. Will it change? Absolutely. We have to adjust based on interest. We think starting some of these skills in the middle school are important. I think people around the table here that's been in meetings on this have agreed with that. We start some of those skills to start growing the program, but you also run your first year program here at the high school and grow it each year after that. So I'm not going to sit and go over all the details that we've given you over the past year, and certainly since summer, but I am here to answer any questions. And administrators, donors, anybody are here to answer any other questions you might have.
Any additional questions?
It's just too far.
Yeah. Yep. I think the board will have to take some time to discuss this and you know, see where we're at on some issues. And I think Derek will be getting with you a little bit on just how curriculum would line up. And you know, he had a couple of suggestions there I liked, where he was talking about if we're going to offer something that needs to be in the second semester, that way you get it in the first semester the following year. Just really looking at some of those things and making sure it fits within our curriculum and, you know, can make it work that way, because we don't want to have people taking a full year off before they go to the next set. But I do agree when he said, you know, 8 classes is too many. I think we're overly ambitious. We got to figure out is that 2 or 4 or 6, you know, what's the right number for us to keep it, make it viable, but yet not have 8 kids sitting in the classroom for one class. So I think those are some of the things we have to really look at.
And Tim, I do think we're ready, the team's ready to take on this task and look at all those issues and implement a good program. I hope you understand what we need to know is, do we have the authority to have an instructor to use the equipment that's been donated And I haven't said this yet tonight, but I say it about every meeting. We certainly appreciate all the effort that has gone into raising the funds for this equipment. And,
Tim, could we look at including Chris? We talked at previous meetings about a lot of this preparatory for a good program later on starts in the middle school. So I'd like to hear at some point in one of our meetings what you feel you currently have, how you might work in something that would add to the program later. I don't know what courses you have specifically that would be appropriate, but we ought to at least take a look at it because we really wanted this to start Project Lead the Way there and the broadcast studio at that level so that when they do come up to that high school level, they're really ready and they can make a
And I might add that is very different than what we're seeing in these other schools. Most of these other schools run a high school only program for their audio video production. We think there is value, Ruth Ann, to starting at the middle school as much as we can to build that up. Probably over time there'll be less need for the middle school programming. If you look at our sample teacher schedule we gave you, you'll see that years 3 and 4, there's less at the middle school. There's still the opportunity to experience it, but the time of the instructor goes more into the high school over time. And we think that'll be natural, but in the beginning, we front-ended the time at the middle school with less time at the high school. So,
So the real question here is the board willing to fund the position to support this program? So, for them to go forward and develop more plans, and is it the board's will for them to go forward and look at staffing for this position?
Well, I think what I'd like to do, speaking from, is get a list of the questions back to Dale and have it on the next agenda, and up, down vote, at least where we're at on the next regularly scheduled board meeting. It's a big one not to have put on our agenda and vote on
You
tonight.
can't do it tonight, but remember we tabled it at the last
Yeah.
meeting.
But
I'd
we
like-
haven't talked about the curriculum yet, and I think that's a valuable component. We're
Like
starting
we've got the
with,
2 weeks now before the
Right,
next
we have-
meeting that we
right,
can
I
ask those
agree with you.
questions and then
yeah,
be able
tonight's
to,
not the night.
put something on the agenda? And then-
Yeah.
February
So-
8th. Okay.
I mean, is that reasonable to ask her questions the next 2 weeks? Provided, I mean, if something comes up in the next 2 weeks, no guarantee, if there's something, a sticking point or something that we don't get answered, it may get delayed, but that'd be the intention, is to at least,
Or could we just go ahead and schedule with our administrators and have a meeting and know
Yep.
that we're going to exchange dialogue there before our next meeting?
Yep.
That way your question might stimulate something I really wanted to know
Yeah.
or somebody else might want to know. So,
and that's, I think, the discussion we have to have, Tom, still amongst the group is, what are those other skill sets? Because as you taught speech in your other ones, what does this teacher also accommodate for us that meets a need of the district? And that's where we really, I think, that's kind of further in that discussion of what's the other skill set that we're looking for. And I think that's what we would, as a group, need to talk about and see what we envision. That way, when we're interviewing the candidate, what skill set are we looking for? Yeah. Yep.
I
Yeah.
would point the board to the information that we have given you a while back, okay? When you're talking about skill sets, outcomes, what's being taught, when it's being taught, if you take a look in the more detailed descriptions of each of the subjects that we've laid out for you, you will see all of the competencies listed that we would expect in each of those classes. Now, where we have classes, the schedule of the teacher, and things like that change as we prepare for next year? Sure. But we tried to lay that out for you.
I think I've got for the broadcast side, it's if you're only teaching 2 broadcast classes,
that.
what are the expectations of the other 4 when you taught speech? Are we truly not going to have that teacher doing something else? Are we going to have them just helping in the district? That's the finalization, I think, that
for
we.
journalism, what other classes do we need? So
Right.
that's what I'm anxious to read your paperwork.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, I just need to weed out some of the, this class and that class and our objectives. I think for me, the big thing keeps going in my mind is the intent to use this for athletics, which I see outside of school, evenings, weekends, this and that. And so I actually am not sure that I don't see this as a full-time teacher and or what do we need to consider as a club? Because there's going to be kids who want to take the academic part of it, but maybe don't necessarily want to be a part of covering the football games, or there might be kids who only really want to be a part of it for the athletic piece. So for me, I think we're in a good place, but I think I don't want to miss anything. So I want to look at what are we doing classroom wise, and then is there a club component, because we got to get that buy-in from those kids that they want to come to the games and they want to be there. But I could see myself in high school, I was, editor of the newspaper, but don't ask me to come to athletic stuff, okay? It's just not going to happen. So I think we need to look at that piece, because a huge part of us having this is so that we can have our athletics events covered. So I see this as two. I see this as 2 things in one, and I don't know that. So I think that there might be an opportunity to entertain an idea of a club and or maybe even a separate class for kids who just want to do sort of the athletic component. So I don't know. My head's just trying to get it all covered.
Sure. Yeah, there can be that
Yeah.
after school event component, which we've taken into
Yeah.
account. Derek, can I ask you, because that was a good comment. There was a core of students that worked with Storied Rivals this year, correct? And you've had the opportunity to talk to them. As far as that group of students, how receptive were they to doing that kind of work? Do you think that they would have more interest in just kind of doing the after-school thing, or would that have sparked more interest to take a class and kind of develop it more? What's your sense based on the experience this past fall?
My sense is I was actually pleasantly surprised at the students' interest in kind of being what you said, kind of a little bit opposite of a student who don't play, who aren't interested, but were eager to get involved in that particular way, and they show up and they're dedicated, they work, doesn't matter what night, and they broadcast it because I listened to what it's called. I watched the sales team on Story Rivals and listened to two freshmen. My knowledge before. They did fantastic. It was really neat to and see them as freshmen doing that. So I was pleasantly surprised at how receptive they were to volunteer and do it in their own time.
They had no training, other than what Story Rivals gave them quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to make sure we're looking at kids who want to do the athletic stuff, but not the in-class stuff, or the kids who want to do in-class stuff, but you know what I mean? So,
Making sure we set it up for both.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
capable. Do we have a day next week that works for people? Do we want to set that up now? Do we want to email? I'm thinking if we can all get our thoughts together this week as board members, meet next week with the team, whoever's able to, meet with the administration, set up time, and then we can hash out those final details and make everyone comfortable. That way on the 8th, we can go ahead and make a decision.
Okay. Pick a day and a time.
Wednesday's really good for me.
So you're looking at the 3rd.
Yeah, it's an ideal day for me.
I am available on the 3rd as well,
Wide open.
other than 9 to 10 a.m.
9 to 10 on Wednesday.
I am
Outside.
unavailable 9 to 10,
Okay.
so anytime other than
You want
that.
to look at maybe Wednesday afternoon?
Sure.
1-ish?
Great.
1
Let's
o'clock
do it.
Wednesday, Ruth Ann?
That'd be great.
Wednesday,
So
February
we'd have
3rd
to
at 1
declare
o'clock.
that a special
Well,
meeting.
declare it a
work
special
session.
meeting. Yeah, it'll be a work session.
Okay.
Where we can just ask those questions. We don't need everybody to show up to
Yeah,
that. and
I'll probably be limited on administrators because we've got some training next week, Title IX, and we've got heavy schedule on some of the administrators, but we'll get who we can.
1
to help
p.m.?
with this.
Is that what you said, Dale? 1 on the 3rd?
Okay?
Does that work for everybody?
That work
In this room?
here?
Yeah,
We
if
have this room
if
or
I
do we-
get that room to Derek. Okay. So it'll be February 3rd at 1 o'clock, room 102. Work session. We will get information out on that to you. Perfect thing, okay?
Sounds great. I appreciate it. Yeah, Frank? February 8th. February 8th.
We will. No. It's an and.
We're looking at a
And.
combination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a club.
I'm
We're
so
like-
sorry.
We're looking at a combination.
No. I'm so sorry. I was thinking this and
two.
a club. To make sure we're getting.
Also, so your in-class curriculum doesn't require you to go to games in the evening if you're not interested.
may
It'd be
have-
tough
Yeah,
to
you
tie
may not be
in,
able to go in the evening to do
Have an
something.
interest
You may
in
not have
field,
that transportation.
It would be available.
or you might be
Try
on
to look
that
at
team.
either a supplemental.
Right.
or
Yeah,
stipend or
supplementary
something.
stipend.
I'm not sure that
Separate time.
after-school person is the same person that's doing it in the daytime,
Right.
because even the instructor.
Some of yours-
Right.
Your
I-
kids
I
may
don't
be the
see
athlete.
that.
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean-
sorry. I
That's
should have
what you
mentioned
said.
that could be in addition to. And then another thing that's on my mind with that is the workload that we would be asking of one person to do it all day and as a club. So you're right with Ruth Ann. I don't know that that couldn't be an additional person, maybe already within the building.
If that's a
who could-
club sport, the club would support itself, but they have their own coach,
Right,
their own
right,
person.
right.
And it operates independently because they'll do just sports. But I don't see the in-house person having that time.
That's
Well,
what I'm
I don't know
saying.
how they
I
do
don't
it.
either.
The
I don't know,
challenge,
yeah.
the challenge that you have is, we do have positions like that. We have the choir and band, right? They have the supplemental. The problem you have is if you split it up with someone else, you have equipment, you have to maintain everything, you have to have skill set. It would be very difficult, I think, at least initially, to split it up among a couple of people because, there's a learning curve for all of this equipment and this process. So when you look at everything, I think that would be extremely difficult to do initially. That I think that is one of the requirements for this person that we would hire would be like our band directors, right, or choir director, that they would have to be willing to spend the time after school as a supplemental to hold this position.
And that's the model that I was describing with Jonathan Alder. They have their production teacher during the day, and then that person's paid a supplemental to be that digital content coach after school.
Yeah.
So they do the basketball, they do the events. They do it as a separate thing. Could be a separate person. Could be that same person.
I think that's all good for
I
that
think
February
it's just
3rd.
discussion. I don't
Yeah,
think we're
it's a
there
good
yet. but
discussion. It's
let
how
us-
much do
we
you
all are
require them every sport?
trying to
We
find-
got to be equal about. I mean, that's a bigger discussion as far as
And
what
again, the
extracurriculars are we covering. I mean,
Well,
we've got a lot of extracurriculars.
And
And
we
then
have
also-
the Performing Arts Center that we also need to address. We've got a
Right.
lot of equipment there that we need someone's expertise. So how does that all fit in? We've got 150,000 over here. We've got 150,000 over here. Two different genres, but we've got to figure out how to make this work.
And again, we have to be really realistic about what we're asking our students who are coming into these courses that we're, requiring them to do. And maybe some will be less outside of the building, but some will be more.
Sure.
So that was just really thinking out loud with the club thing, is that there's going to be some kids who, for whatever reason, just it's not going to work for them to make a huge commitment outside of the class to be at athletic events.
Thanks
Right.
for the discussion. Appreciate it.
So we'll plan a meeting at 1 p.m. February 3rd in this room.
Good.
Assume you'll send out the notice on that.
Yeah, we'll put out a notice.
Okay. All right.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks again. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Frank, Tom, Mike.
We'll let you know when the posting goes out.
I'm working part-time.
What'd you say, second person as a coach?
We did say we needed a second
That's
person.
Thanks, Tom.
You want
We'll
to move
talk
the
to her.
executive now?
I'm
then
sure
we'll-
you want to get your hands on all of our equipment.
We're going to give a quick update on building and grounds, and then we'll go into executive.
I just wanted to give a quick update on the building and grounds. We met on Friday. The administration staff, Dale, Debbie,
Thank you, Tom.
thank you, and Kim, with the Italian contract. We continued to review the staffing issues, training issues. We're experiencing a high turnover rate still. They assured us that they had 3 more people coming in, that they were doing background checks. I'm not sure if those people made it or not, but they thought they were coming in this week. And we talked about on our RFP that we send out that we need to be more specific in what we're requesting. And I know Kim was working on that. And they still have not provided us our 2019, 2020 credit. That's something that's still outstanding. that we talked about.
When do we
Yes.
have to have that contract totally finished? In other words, either take it out for more bids for other
We do
people
that
to bid
February
it, or
1st.
We want to put it out in
In
February.
February,
February?
about for RFP in February.
It would seem like it's to our advantage to take it out
We have-
no matter what, whether we stay
Well,
with
it's only a
them or
one-year
not.
contract anyway.
It needs to go out.
Okay.
And we want it to be a little more specific this time because in the past, when the RFPs went out, we said, this is the work to be done. You determine the staffing and what the costs are. We think now we know pretty much what staffing is needed. We want to define that staffing so we get a good apples to apples. If you remember the last bids, you had to look at these, but then you had to add this back. This one doesn't including it. So we're going to try to get that to a point where we can have a good apples to apples comparison on the bids that come in. So we'll get, that's what she meant by more specific
Yes.
in the RFP.
We still continue to have similar issues that we've spoken about previously.
So my apologies to all of you who unfortunately this isn't getting rectified because you guys are the ones who are suffering. But things aren't getting taken care of.
We kind of describe it that it's better, it's just not where we want it to be. It's better. But so we have a lot of things to consider as we look at next year.
Are we getting money, compensation for those employees that are with the vendor that are not showing up for work and that
For
we're
the current year, yes,
This year.
for the current year?
but we have not received it for last year. We're still working
Okay.
on that.
They had made the point at this last meeting that they had to wait till the end of their
Contract?
year for their auditors in order to be able to go back and issue us something for last year. That's what we heard at this meeting.
And did
We've
they
heard
say
that
when that
twice.
was?
But
We
it's
heard
been,
that twice, that they had to close the books.
right.
And we heard that again.
They had to close the
Friday.
books.
So that's
Well, when
twice.
did they close their books? Did they say like we do that in February?
Because 2020 was part of last year, we're on a fiscal year, July 1
Got it. Yeah.
to June, then they had to finish, this is what they're saying, they had to finish their calendar year, which encompassed part of that,
Oh, okay.
before they
I see.
could get their financial entity to release any monies. That was this month's discussion on those monies. I do think
I've
we're
heard
going
it
to get it.
twice.
I do think,
Yeah,
we had
I've heard
original
it twice.
estimates.
You've heard it twice.
25 to 30, I think, was the neighborhood that we were
30.
looking at.
Yeah, it's like 30.
That's bizarre
Oh,
answer, right? Because that doesn't make any sense, Dale, what they told us, because if
I
you're closing your
realize
books at the end of this year, the spring was part of the year, which was on last year's contract. So what they're telling you doesn't make any sense from an accounting point of view. I'm just
No.
telling you that's very suspicious, okay? So I've just never seen anything like that. I will
needed
ask
to
my
get-
nor have we.
We needed to get through the end of the year is the moral of the story. It wasn't, that we
Yeah,
thought
well,
that
they're
was a
gonna close
valid
out- They're
answer.
gonna close out their books and then it's done.
Well,
So
but
they've already closed out their 2020 books. And, but the first year's contract was still part of that because we go from the June contract. So that doesn't make any sense. That's not, if you're doing cash accrual accounting,
Well,
that
no,
doesn't
because
make any sense at all.
the gentleman that's in charge of all this said that we should have it settled when we pressed him on, when can we expect it to be done? The answer was, end of this month.
End
wasn't
of
it?
this month, but we also heard, it's coming, and we haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, we had a meeting, from my memory, we had a meeting September 9th. We had a meeting October
October.
29th, and we had a meeting December, first part of
Well,
December.
December, you and Ken met with them.
So we hear some of the same thing. Yeah, we realize that.
And that's all I have.
we seem to have lost our
We
president.
lost our president, so I don't know who takes over now.
Check him out, Amanda.
Is that Amanda?
Amanda's here, so
Amanda, we
ready
want
to
to,
go.
we want to go to
Executive
executive session for discussion of personnel.
All right.
You
It
take
wasn't
over.
on
Do
Well,
we
you
have
have
a motion? Do we,
Yeah,
mo- we
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Make a motion?
I'll second.
all right, treasurer?
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Stewart,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
And Mr. Swagger has stepped out. So we are going to executive session at 8:16.
And no action to be taken afterwards.
No action to be
action
taken.
taken.